everybody. I'm showing off my latest addition to the cabin. I took the old logwood stove out and broke down and bought myself a Jøtul, which I have wanted for many years. I would have liked to have put it in here when I first built the cabin 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess it was. But they are expensive, and my budget ran out before I got to buying the stove. So I put in a very good chimney and bought the inexpensive logwood stove and have used it for 2 or 3 years now. The only issue that I have, well, several issues that I have with the logwood stove, it isn't efficient at all. So if I'm out here overnight in the winter time, I have to be up every hour and a half or so putting more wood on the fire, or it goes out. And another thing, the surface on the top never gets hot enough for cooking. So I could put a tea kettle on there, and within an hour and a half or so it might come to a boil, but you really couldn't use it for cooking. And this Jøtul is the Model 602F. I won't mention price tags, but they're not cheap. But I'm very glad that I finally got one. To break it in, you have to season the cast iron that it's made from, and the method recommended is to have 4 small fires in it, each fire a little bit bigger than the previous one, and then you let that fire burn out and the cast iron completely cool down before you light the next fire. Well, I've done that. I've had all 4 fires. When I got up to the 3rd and 4th fire, it was amazing how long the heat stayed in the cast iron. With the 3rd one, I was out here 5 hours after I lit the fire, and it had been out for some time. You still couldn't put your hand on the stove and keep it on there. So, and this stove, I guess, as I should have said, has a true cooking top. That top area there is. So the only thing I've done so far is boiled a kettle on it, but this is 9:30 in the morning and I'm about to light it. I want to keep it going all day today into the evening, and my plan is to use my South African potjie and do beans on top. So I'll show you that process, and have beans and fried dough froggers in here for dinner this evening, hopefully. So I'll show you now lighting the fire. My fire starting method is not original or unique to me. One of my viewers, and I can't remember who, so if you're watching this video you know who you are, told me that he burns the bio bricks like I do, and what he does to start the fire instead of putting kindling is he breaks up one of the bio bricks and uses that as kindling. I can't remember if he said he puts it in a brown paper bag or if that part is original to me, but I smash one up with an axe. All it is compressed sawdust and shavings and whatever, hardwood, various kinds of hardwood. The particular ones were from a company in New Brunswick that makes hardwood flooring and that sort of thing out of various kinds of wood. And then I put it in a paper bag. Paper bags are hard to find. As a matter of fact, I'm importing them. This one I brought back with me from Prague in the Czech Republic. You might have noticed that it says bake shop outside of it. I was in Prague a year ago with some friends, and we had rented a beautiful apartment in a heritage building in the old part of the city. And the ground floor was a bakery, so every morning I was down there to get fresh pastries for breakfast. Anyway, that's one of the brown paper bags that I have. I now hoard them. If I find a store that gives out brown paper bags, I bring them home and hang on to them. They get recycled in the stove. Usually it's a one-match process. That will start the shavings and whatever on fire. Open the vent full way. This is the only thing that controls the air. There's no damper in the stovepipe or anything like that, and it does an amazing job. Well, I will bring you back once I have this going and a couple of bio bricks in there. Well, while the fire is getting going, I'll get my beans ready to put on the stove. I guess I say beans lightly, term lightly anyway. I'm using black-eyed peas. I always have some black-eyed peas on hand to add to soups and whatever. In my opinion, I hope I don't offend anybody in the South, but a black-eyed pea is actually a bean. And what I just put in here is a bundle of herbs that I just went out and gathered out of the hoop house. Cutting leaf celery, sage, thyme, savory, and a couple of those large Asian chives. I think that's everything. Put that in the bottom. And this is some of my hot Thai chilies that I grew last year and dried. To give it a little spice, I'll put a heaping teaspoon of both seeds and skin in the bottom. And some of my onions. I am still using my own onions that I harvested last August. Quite a number of them now have these green sprouts. Not all of them, as you can see that one doesn't have it yet, but there aren't many left anyway. I didn't count, but probably a dozen or so is all that remains anyway. Stove seems to have ignited finally. I had to use 2 or 3 matches and a couple of extra pieces of paper today for some reason. That might be enough onion to get started, I guess. I'll add some more to the top of it as it cooks, probably. The black-eyed peas have been soaking overnight, and I've rinsed them a couple of times, changed the water. It's rather a lot. I didn't realize that I had started so many, I guess. And I'm going to do these like I would do baked beans, so molasses. Not measuring, but somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 cup of molasses. I had too much to begin with. You don't want to get them too dark. But I think I need to add more as I'm cooking them. I'll add a little more. And then water to cover. This is just cold tap water. The easiest way to bring it out here was to put it in the tea kettle, just enough to cover them. I'll be adding water during the day as they cook. Now the tricky part is going to be to adjust the stove all day to keep it so that this doesn't actually boil, it just simmers. I'm not used to this stove, or not used to cooking on wood, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, I'll give you a look at the stove with the Potjie on it in just a second here. Well, there's the Potjie on the stove, and that's what you're seeing burning in there is still basically the broken up bio brick that I use for kindling, and I have put one more brick in on top of it, which is just starting to catch fire. Right now I still have the vent going wide open. I do that until you get the fire well established, and then I'll close it down about halfway. I don't think I have said previously, but the reason I'm doing this in the daytime instead of camping out here overnight and doing it is this time of year it would not be very comfortable to keep a wood fire going all night in the cabin. It has finally started to warm up here, still not terribly hot, but it's supposed to get into the 20s today, and anyway, I don't think I would want to be out here all night with a wood fire going, so I'm doing it in the daytime. With my beans, I'm going to have something that's traditional here anyway. Fried dough. We call it dough froggers. I'm not allowed to call it a beaver tail. Whoops, I did, didn't I? I made a video, oh, I don't know, a number of years ago now, where I called my fried dough a beaver tail because they sell things at fairgrounds that look quite like this, and it's called a beaver tail. Well, I got threatened with a lawsuit by the people who have the copyright on the name beaver tail. I don't know whether the poor beavers in the swamps understand that their tail is owned by somebody else or not, but I'm just going to make a small batch of dough here, bread dough. Not measuring anything, as you can see, but flour and a little salt. I will actually measure the yeast, I guess. I'll put a teaspoon of yeast. This is, the yeast is fairly old. That's a teaspoon is quite a bit, but it'll probably still be quite active. I keep it in the freezer. The fire is going quite nicely now. Once again, that's not hot water, it's just cold tap water. Together before I turn it out to knead it. And I don't want it to be too wet. Same container that I brought the beans out in. It's what they call a proofing bucket. Put dough in it to rise. That's what I always use for my no-knead bread. It's just the right size for a loaf of no-knead bread, and I guess what I'm doing here is roughly the same amount of dough. Hopefully it won't blow off the top. I frequently think of Julia Child when I'm cooking and mention her, as she would say, using your impeccably clean hands, or as she would have said, when Julia died a few years ago, I felt like I'd lost a friend. I don't think I ever missed one of her cooking programs. Well, you don't need to watch me knead this forever. If I can get the camera shut off here with my floured fingers. But I will knock this down probably 2 or 3 times during the day. And it'll be ready to fry, hopefully, when my black-eyed peas are cooked early this evening. Well, it's now 1:45. Evidently I have managed to keep the stove regulated properly, and it hasn't been boiling. I guess it's too dark down in there to actually see what's happening. The bunch of herbs has come up to the top because I've been stirring, and they're a very light brown. Tempted to add more molasses, but these things tend to get darker towards the end of the cooking when most of the water has been evaporated away. So I'll leave it for a bit yet, but they're soft, or getting softer anyway, so they are cooking. And now I want to show you a couple of things new to the solar power here. And I could use it in here right now, I guess. It's just a cheap fan that I bought at Walmart, and I can't find anywhere on it how many watts it draws. but I was convinced that it was so small that it would probably work, and it does. I have it plugged into the inverter, and I turn the inverter on. I think it's ready to go here. It makes a noise, but so does the inverter. You're hearing both noises. The inverter has a fan in it as well. But that will come in handy in here on hot summer days, I think, if I sit here on the sofa and have a nice breeze blowing in here anyway. I'm just trying to think of little things that I can use the solar power for other than the lights. And now I will show you what I've been able to find for the lights. These are made or sold by Westinghouse. I imagine they're made by some child in China like everything else, but they are a acrylic or plastic, whatever you want to call it, clear shade, and it's sort of ribbed, as you can probably see. Anyway, at night it doesn't reduce the amount of light in here at all. If anything, I think it distributes it better. Maybe that has something to do with the ribbing, but I like it better than the bare light bulbs hanging there anyway. And I have them both going. Had them going all day. I think it's good to be drawing some power down out of the battery rather than just having it constantly charging. So usually if I'm around, I leave the lights on all day. And it's partially cloudy. It's still reading 13.2 even with both lights going. In my last video, or video before the last one or something, this picture was in it briefly when I was showing some of the solar equipment in here, and I had a number of people ask questions about it thinking it was a painting. What it is an enlargement of a photograph that I took of the cabin the first winter that I had the cabin. That was I didn't paint it until the following spring, unfortunately. I wished it were painted in the photograph, but anyway, that's taken the very first winter that I had the cabin. Well, since I'm showing you photographs, I'll carry on and show you this one. It's another enlargement of a photograph that I took, and it's my favorite. It's a blue jay, as you can see. But that is taken out the window here. I was sitting on the sofa watching the birds at the bird feeder, and this guy was posing for me in a snow-laden tree. I like that photograph very much. But that's all. I won't show you any more artwork. Well, if the black-eyed peas taste as good as they smell, it's going to be pretty good. I'm ready to start frying my dough. Or I guess I'm ready to start frying the dough. I don't know how hot that frying pan is. Now I can hear it sizzling a little bit there. I think I knocked the dough down 3 times, and then after I shaped these 2 pieces, I let that rise again for a bit. I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like when I'm ready to turn it over. Cooking with a wood fire has reminded me of a little treasure that I have, and that looks quite nice. There's a lady in my family who's been gone for a few years now. I'm not certain if she made it to 100 or if she was 99 or so when she died, but she was a retired school teacher. Her and her brother lived together. They never married. They lived together in the same home that they were born in. I used to love to go visit her because she had such wonderful stories to tell of bygone eras. And one of the last times that I visited her, we were having a cup of tea and talking, and she went into her pantry and said, "I have something I'd like you to have." And she came out with a little booklet and gave it to me. It was her mother's handwritten recipe book. As I said, this lady herself was practically 100 years old, and I don't know when her mother might have written it, but a long time ago. I still have it. I've never cooked anything out of it, but it was written in the time when people cooked around here with just wood stoves. That's all there was. And a modern day cook would be driven mad by it, I think. For one thing, the ingredients, it would just be a lump of butter the size of a walnut, and half a teacup of sugar, and so many teacups of flour, and all that sort of thing. But then when she got this cake or whatever it was all put together and in the pan and ready to go in the oven, the instructions for cooking it would be to bake it in a moderate oven until done. And that's written throughout the book everywhere. I really treasure the little thing. Hope I never lose it. Well, I will have you at the table as soon as the other side browns. I don't know if I mentioned, but I did add a little more molasses, and I think get about the color that I want. And I added salt, but at the very end. If you put salt in at the beginning when you're cooking beans, they never get soft. They always have a little bite to them. So. Black-eyed peas like they've never been served before, probably, but they're very good. I have been saying Potjie, the thing that I cooked them in. If you've never seen one or heard of one before, it's a South African cooking utensil. They come in various shapes and sizes, and some of them with legs so that you can use them over a fire outdoors. If you see it written in the title of the video here, you would think it would be pronounced Potjie or something. It's Potjie, I think is the spelling of it. But it's not an English word, it's an Afrikaans word. And it's pronounced, as near as I can tell, as Potjie. I love my fried dough, even though I'm not allowed to call it what I want to. Well, I think that's just about enough for this video, introducing my new stove and getting to use it first time I've ever, I think, really cooked on wood. So thank you very much for watching.